Very good.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. As the lovely gentleman just announced, if you are having problems hearing, you can move forward. We all will be using our projecting voices, but the mic doesn't do a lot of that. Welcome to people in the room, as well as those that might be joining us at a later date. Just a couple housekeeping things. The restrooms are going to be out the door to the left, and then at the end of the hallway on the left. And we'd like to welcome you to the November program of Dementia Caring and Coping series, brought to you by Roseville Alzheimer's and Dementia Community Action Team. Today we have in store for you, we'll be talking about how faith communities can become more dementia friendly. So we have many of us to tell our own stories, as well as to provide you with some resources and steps of how your faith community can take that journey. And first, I'm going to pass it on to Carolyn, Klaver, and Robbin, Frazier, who will kind of set the stage today.
So I want to share with you, Robbin, do you want to start first, or do you want me to start?
You can do the
Very
intro.
good.
Yes, thank you.
So what I want to talk to you about is that we noticed as time was passing in the faith communities that people with dementia were kind of falling off the map. They were disappearing from the faith community, and some could have been instrumental in your faith communities. And why is that? And so as we've been digging into it further and trying to figure out this issue, Robbin and I have both been exploring this quite heavily. And so we want to share with you, some is from research, but some, Robbin's in national work, I'm in local work. And Tom has experienced it as his faith community at St. Odilia, as well Sam with the Faith Community Nurse Network. So there definitely are barriers, and we want to also talk about those.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today. I am just so passionate about the opportunities that faith communities have to support people living with dementia and their caregivers. So want to just briefly give you a introduction that just lets you know how many people are affected and which communities are often affected at a greater rate. So we know here in the U.S. there's over 6.9 million people living with dementia. And 73% of the people living with dementia are age 75 or older. One of the things that we always want to talk about in terms of Alzheimer's and related dementia is that it is not a part of normal aging. And I just want to repeat that Alzheimer's and the related dementias are not a part of normal aging. And so not everyone is going to develop this brain disease, but for those that are impacted, we want to be able to support them and help them maintain that spiritual connectedness. And so when you look at some of the disparities, and it's a big word, but really talks about the differences that we see in different populations. One of the pieces that we know is that 2/3 of the people with Alzheimer's are women. We also know that Latino community is 1.5 times more likely to have Alzheimer's, And the African American community is twice as likely when you compare them to their white counterparts. So when you think about your congregation and the women and the people that make up that group, this disease impacts a lot of people. And so I do work in the, across communities, but I have a specific program we're going to tell you about later called Alter that was developed by a nurse-led coalition of Black professionals for Black churches. So we'll cover that later in the agenda, but I wanted to share some information on the African American community because I know often people have a lot of background in general about Alzheimer's, but they don't know how different communities are impacted. And so I'm not going to read all of these because you have the packet, but want to highlight just a couple of things. And so one of those is that only 48% of Blacks report that they are confident that they can access culturally competent care. And we see that over half of the Black community is concerned if they're going to get the same level of care of other people. Now, there's a lot of historical things that have happened in the medical world where people have been exploited and taken advantage of. And so we want to be sensitive to that as we are directing families to connect with a local provider. Recognize that you're going to have to talk about the benefits of that and help them get with providers that they are going to be comfortable with. This piece is a piece on partnering with faith-based organizations. And so we want you to know that the faith-based organizations really are critical for public health. I'm in the School of Public Health at the university, and there's work that our teams do there in terms of research and intervention. But we need the people and families that are affected to be able to find that support in their faith community, which is often the second home. I spent my summers with my grandmother down in Beebe, Arkansas, and she was at church, at least 3 times a week. And I remember I was in Nebraska and we went to the Catholic church and then we went to the Black Baptist church in the summer. And I'd be like, Grandma, we're going to be there, like 2.5 or 3 hours. And so I grew up with both of those backgrounds. But for the families, they've often been involved with your church for generations. And so as they are impacted by dementia, sometimes there's that fear on, I'm not going to know the people's names at church. A caregiver might feel like, are they going to do something that's going to be embarrassing to them? And so what you want to know, let your congregation knows, is that everyone is welcome and that you understand that support is there, because what you can do in your church is reduce the stigma. Because when stigma isn't addressed, people have shame and they stay silent. I call them the 3 S's: stigma, shame, and silence. And that means they're not getting the support. And so you have the power when they see you having programming and doing things. They know, hey, this church, they're in tune to this. I can seek resources from my church and maintain that spiritual home. And in terms of inclusive congregations, in addition to reducing the dementia stigma, there's that opportunity to provide empathy and support. To do education. They are in the church. I'm finding so many churches now, they have a health and wellness ministry, a women's ministry. They have outreach ministries visiting people at home that may not be able to come out into the community. So however your congregation wants to do it, know that connectedness you can offer can mean a big difference in the life of the person living with dementia and their caregivers.
So next I want to share with you a study that actually included the Jewish Family Services out in St. Louis Park. It was a national survey, and I think it has not necessarily come to the attention of many, and I want to raise it up again. So this was in 2017. It's the Research Triangle Institute International Report. And they showed that we have a need for dementia worship and programming in communities. They are hoping that faith communities can directly assist with people with dementia and help their caregivers. The next need is we need to educate the clergy and the community. And so across the country, there were 5 programs, and the one in Minneapolis was through the Jewish Community Alzheimer's Task Force. They really brought up some important points. First of all, spirituality and religious activity can provide relief from anxiety. It can reduce behavioral disturbances and improve quality of life for people with dementia. Therefore, it can also reduce the burden for the caregiver. Faith communities can offer a range of services that incorporate aspects of spirituality and religion. So you heard Robbin say how important the faith community was to her grandmother, as well to our family and to my parents. And so if it's that important, of course, it could be a part of relief for families. So what the study also said was, if you can keep people with dementia and their caregivers engaged in your faith community by offering special spiritual and religious features in your programs, and then have a specialized religious service if at all possible, and or support for the group, for the dyad, which a dyad is your caregiver and your person living with dementia. Are you able to offer a specialized religious service? But in order to do this, we have to start with education. Otherwise, it's not going to be helpful. So I like to think of our clergy really as first responders. You know, they're not 911. I understand that you all know that. But think about your faith community and your family. And when there was something that was really heavy happening for your family, who did they reach to? They asked for people in their Bible study. They asked for the pastor to come and pray with them. They asked the prayer team to pray for them. So we need to be thinking of then, how do we get the resources in the hands of clergy and care ministers? So what I'm hoping is that you will all kind of think of the community that your faith community is in, and are there community-based services in that community? I represent Lyngblomsten Community Services, but we also have other organizations, Volunteers of America. We have other organizations. We have Northeast Day Spot. So we have others, Family Means out in Stillwater. There's lots of them in the metro. At minimum, reach to one of us in the community services so that we can get you connected with the right group. Okay, that's one of our hopes. The next is, are there support groups that you can offer up to people in your faith community? We offer that, so do some of the other caregiver services in the community. Is there a respite? Can this family have an opportunity to have their person attend a program where there's cognitive, where there's brain stimulation, where there's laughter, where there's fun, where they look forward to going to it? Because then the caregiver can have a break, which is so essential. Also, Is there a possibility that there can be home services coming in to help? And/or is there an opportunity for counseling? Is there a chance for the caregiver to reach out and say, I don't know what to do. What are my resources? What are my options? What should I be thinking about at this time? And can you help me on this journey? I will tell you a personal story. I just had an email come through this morning from a family that he had been diagnosed, and he's going through cancer treatment and is having a decline quickly in his dementia. And she went back to the primary and said, I need resources. I don't know what to do. And they said, you're on your own. So I'm not joking. If you see me seem urgent about this, I really am asking you to be a part of this solution. So let's look at what this study showed about religion that's important in America. 77% of adults identify with some religious faith. 2/3 of religiously affiliated adults say they pray every day and that religion is very significant to them. These adults regularly engage with faith-based organizations, and of adults over 65, 48% attend religious services at least once a week, and an additional 25% attend services once or twice a month. 33% of adults over age 65 participate in prayer, scripture study, and/or religious education groups at least once per week. Now, when they looked at this, they were also trying to see if there were psychological benefits of participating in faith community activities. And they showed that religious involvement, particularly faith community attendance for those who chose to attend, can also provide psychosocial benefits. That means that the caregiver is feeling less burdened, less alone, hoping that there's others that care about their situation. So then you might think, as a faith community, if the faith community is so important, why do they stop coming to worship? Well, it's not just a simple answer. There's a lot of reasons. Sometimes it declines because they're not physically able to get out of the home, into the car, into the church to attend because of mobility. Also, when there's progressive cognitive or thinking decline, it can affect the ability to engage in a service, which makes it hard for the caregiver because they can't get the person involved in the service. They feel like they might disrupt others. But also, if they can't even maintain their focus and it becomes stressful for the person living with dementia, the caring family may choose to not continue to attend services. So can you pause 1 second and think about that? If that was so important in their life, and now all of a sudden, by no choice of their own, they cannot do it. I think about my own impact, and so I think it's really important. So what about the failure and frustration that happens even when people are very early on? They might even still be able to drive, but they are not able to remember everything that's new being introduced to them at a faith service. So think about intense scripture study. Think about interactive prayer. That requires a lot to be going on in your head while you're doing that, a lot of executive function. Activities that may help in maintaining spiritual connections might include a familiar song or prayer. So I often think about going back to the Lord's Prayer. I think of our college choir, our concert choir traveled around the Midwest and in Europe, and we always ended with Beautiful Savior. That's an amazing song, Amazing Grace. But what about performing a simple religious ritual? What about that item of one's faith that a person is in awe with? And then when you look at what could be helpful, another roadblock for people is transportation. Would you not all agree? And here we live in the metro where we have a lot of transportation companies, and yet it's a hard thing. So what is the outcome of a special worship? Well, we know that when people attend a special worship, the short term, that participant living with dementia has better sleep. We also know that their mood is better because they are feeling like they are getting a need met. Remember, we have basic needs like food, water, shelter, right, love, but spirituality is in that need. And I want you to be thinking about this is also their engagement and alertness can increase because they had meaningful activity. So this was a comment, and we run a group respite called The Gathering, and we have at one time had over 300 volunteers across the metro. And this comment was exactly what our volunteers would say. So I'm going to read it. It is mysterious how well a special time for people with dementia can be. We can't put a label on it, but if you have a person with faith-based tendencies, or faith was part of their upbringing, the services can speak to a part of memory that elicits responses differently than any other stimuli. Have any of you been with people when they're dying and they haven't spoken for a time and they join in praying with you with the Lord's Prayer? I mean, I have holy goosebumps right now. As Robbin mentioned, having a faith association allows for a higher degree of trust. They feel supportive, they feel safe. Isn't that an interesting word? Safe. People can't imagine an Alzheimer's program or an Alzheimer's service or a dementia service being happy, but I will tell you from our own gathering program, and I think I can have some agree with me that are sitting here, there is humor, there is joy, the volunteers love it and can't wait to come back. The participants say, when can I go again? Everybody feeds off each other. There is a lot of care that's happening. And I would say for our gathering that there were volunteers that were addicted and actually would retire from the gathering after 18 years of volunteering. So that need to feel needed is on both sides. So now I want to say something that Annette brought up in this study. She wanted us to be raising awareness, but she also wanted us to be reducing stigma at the same time. And in order to do this, faith communities must have the support of their community's clergy. That's crucial. It's the same with the Faith Community Nurse Program. It's crucial that that clergy is involved in it. Also, we need to address the incorrect view that people with cognitive impairment have fewer spiritual needs. They don't have fewer spiritual needs. So how does stigma feel? And I really, I want us to be looking at this from many angles. I'm talking specifically about the stigma that families with dementia feel, but I'm also think about the generational harm that's happened to our Latino and our African American people. And so let's really focus on the stigma. People with dementia are often viewed negatively unless someone close to them stands against the stigma and treats it as a medical problem like diabetes. Suppose the general public had this negative idea about people with hair color. You know, every blonde is dumb. Have you ever heard that joke? How would people react to you? How would you feel? I know that was a pretty light comment, but I just wanted you to be thinking how our society treats things. So let's dig in deeper here. Prejudice and discrimination together create stigma. So negative attitudes and negative responses can make a person feel unwanted and shamed. And it might have only been one little comment that was made in the hallway or one glance while they walked into the faith community. So stigma can seriously affect the well-being of those who experience it. Seriously affect the well-being. It can affect people while they are wanting and needing to be with their social and spiritual circles of support. It can stop many people from seeking the treatment and support they need. They may not even go to the doctor because those around them are looking down on them, kind of putting that blame on them rather than blame on the disease. It can profoundly change how stigmatized people feel about themselves and change the way others see them. So prejudice is when we judge or feel hostile to a person or group or their presumed characteristics. Negative attitudes and negative responses can make a person feel undesirable and shameful. And this word shame, I think you've heard a couple times here today, but we truly have our people feeling that. Dementia can affect people of a wide range of ages, education, and income levels, jobs, religions, and cultures. I know people in their 30s that have dementia. Factors that contribute to stigma are the presence of dementia-related changes, including when their skill level starts to change, when their behavior might change, or their personality. Think of how the media or sitcoms portray people with dementia. That's the time to stand up in the room that you're in and say, you know what, I don't like what they're showing here. That's not accurate. They're making fun of somebody that we shouldn't be making fun of. That comes down to a lack of understanding of dementia. Therefore, we need to be speaking about this in the faith communities. So now, if I were the person that stigma was caused to, it might cause a lack of access to my medical care. I would believe in those negative stereotypes that were generated by society and the media, but now I feel that way about myself. A tendency to avoid seeking help and keeping symptoms a secret. Then we have social isolation, which plays a role in why they don't show up at church as well, and constricted social support network, depression, loss of hope for support and care for those around them. Did we not all experience social isolation during the COVID shutdown? Did any of you enjoy that? Are people with dementia actually, when they get an opportunity to be with a group that gets them, that you can see them relax and start to be themselves again? So labels contribute to stigma because of the negative stereotypes society attributes to them. So when language is used, it's hurtful. It can lead to discrimination and exclusion. A simple thing like negative word choices can reduce the ability of people to live in their faith community. Stigma can have many layers, and we talked about that with race, culture, religion. Multi-layered stigma can create enormous barriers for people that are trying to seek support from their community, faith community, and medical community. Isn't it amazing that ripple effect? We're talking faith communities, and yet this is bigger as far as how it's affecting people. So what helps people? Being allowed to continue their faith practices. That means that people in the pews have been informed and they're not turning around and giving the evil eye to somebody who's maybe making a little bit of noise behind them, right? When they're able to be a member in their religious community, they are also feeling the support of that community, and we all have to be a part of this. So acknowledge that presence in your own community. Try to help your faith community walk in the shoes of the person facing stigma. Be aware of labels that you're using. Speak out against stigmatized materials in the media. Speak up about stigma to friends, family, and colleagues, and be aware of your own attitudes and judgments. So I'm going to walk to the bridge to end my life. If one person smiles at me on the way, I will not jump.
Hello, my name is Tom Hayes. I'm from St. Odilia's Parish. So we're going to talk now about the journey that St. Odilia's went through as we started our journey to becoming a dementia-friendly parish. We were founded in Shoreview in 1960, and our mission is to make Jesus Christ known and loved. When we started this journey, we had 11,000 parishioners. But we didn't start with a design of how many phases we were going to go through. We were just started out on our own, so we said, well, as it turned out, this is the phases that we ended up with. We had to build awareness. We had to determine our scope, because we couldn't do everything. We needed to determine what the parish needed, and then begin the implementation, and then refine it along the way. We didn't really have a hard and fast definition of what a dementia-friendly parish was. What we used, we said, as we envisioned it, this parish would accept the values and the people regardless of their cognitive abilities. We'd focus on their strengths and their abilities, and we're open to whatever they have to offer. We would offer opportunities for spiritual and pastoral support so that they could enjoy being part of our worshiping community. And we understood that this was an ongoing process. So we started in 2017, and you'll probably pick up along the way, we attended one of Carolyn's presentations on dementia-friendly congregation. And in March of 2017, we attended it, and a group of us went back and started talking about it. But it took us about a year and a half before we finally said, you know, we need to take this someplace else. We need to move on with it. So in October of 2018, we actually went to dementia-friendly training so that we could become a dementia friend, and we could learn more about what it meant to have dementia and to include people with dementia into our organization and our community. Then we presented it to our leadership in 2018, and then in January of 2019, after they had said, yes, we think we should do this, we did a survey of our parishioners, tried to figure out what they needed. And then we began the education. We had some presentations, we had articles in our newsletter, in our bulletin, and later in 2019, we actually offered our first Mass, and near the end of it, we had our pastor who decided that, yes, this is going to be a dementia-friendly parish, and we need to make it work. So the scope, we have over 60 ministries within our parish. So resources are always stretched and being pulled in different areas. So when we started this, we said, normally you do a needs assessment and then you figure out what you want and then you set your scope. But we said in order to really focus, we'd have to limit our scope to begin with. And we wanted to do something we said that we could sustain. We didn't want to start off with a bang and then crash. So we decided that we would become a dementia-friendly parish. We'd provide training and education and information to our parishioners of what was available throughout the community. We did not want to duplicate efforts. So Carolyn talks about when you have support groups or when you have respite times. We were a small group. We wanted to start out and maintain our traction. So we said, we're not going to duplicate. We'll share the information to our parishioners of what's available, but let's focus on what we can do and what we can maintain. So we're not going to try a memory cafe or a respite or a support group. We'll partner with those people who can do it. We'd share the information. We would host dementia-friendly masses. We're a Catholic organization, we're a Catholic parish, community. The Mass is central to our spiritual life. In other organizations, it is not that way, but this is what we said, this is what's important to us. And what Carolyn talked about earlier, what's familiar to people. If you grow up Catholic, you know the Mass. You participate in it, and once you're in it, it's just becomes a part of you. And we understood that this was going to be a process that was ongoing. Next, we need to figure out what our needs were. So how many people do we have? What age group? That was important to understand because dementia affects a large part because of your age. And then we wanted to find out from the parishioners, what is your personal experience with dementia? What concerns do you have? Do you know who to contact if you have questions? And how can the parish help? What we learned from the 167 responses we got back was that 90% knew someone who was personally affected by dementia. And 41% had a current experience with someone with dementia. 57% of those people did not know what to do or who to contact. Like Carolyn mentioned, you're on your own. They just didn't know. And finally, what was interesting to us is 24% of the people who responded were currently unpaid caregivers. So they were living the experience that we were trying to address. So in 2018, when we did the survey and when we looked at our census, we had 2,600 parishioners who were over the age of 60. Half of those were over the age of 70. So if we have 10% who could potentially have dementia, we've got 260 people in our parish who could potentially have dementia. According to the Alzheimer's Association, 66% of people who have dementia live at home. So now we've got another 170 who are caregivers, at least. So now we're up to over 400 people in our parish who have either dementia experience or are working with or caring for them. So close to half of our church could be filled by people who have dementia or are directly affected by it. So when we showed this graphic to our leaders and to other people, it really came home. Half the people in our parish church could actually be affected directly or supporting somebody with dementia. So what we did, we implemented, we had the first Mass in 2019. We also joined the North Central Consortium for the Gathering. Again, partnering, sharing information. We had our second Mass in 2020 in February, and then the pandemic hit. We were off to a big start, and so what could we do? Well, we weren't going to meet together, but we did keep awareness in articles and in our newsletters, in our bulletins. And in 2022, we had 2 Masses. And those Masses, I should say, as Carolyn mentioned, we wanted to focus on keeping them simple. So we, instead of having it in the big church, we had it in our chapel. We wanted to make sure that it was in a facility that was handicapped accessible. We had familiar music. We had handouts with large print. We had scheduled it on a day of the week that we thought was most likely for people to be able to come, and at the time of the day when it would be most likely to be convenient for the caregivers, not early in the morning or late in the evening. So we scheduled it at Thursdays at 1:30. And then, again, to tie in with what Carolyn had mentioned, we had a social hour afterwards. Because if you're going to go through all the effort to get somebody out of the house and go to Mass, and then, okay, keep it short and sweet, and then now what? So we have a social hour afterwards. And the first couple of Masses that we had more volunteers than we had people attending. We've had as many as 24, 20, almost 30. It varies. The weather has a big factor to do with it. If it's too hot, if it's cold. But we've all been energized by just having the experience, and we've met new people. We've had people from across the metro come and join. So we celebrated 2 Masses in 2022. We went to a every other month approach. It started late in 2023, so we picked the odd months because we didn't want to go through December, and then, holidays, so we're trying to pick that out. So we did that every other month, and then this year we went full, we've been going every other month. And then, fortunately for us, St. Mary's of the Lake decided they wanted to do it as well, so they're gonna do it on the opposite months with us. So we've now got a month, or every month, we have a dementia-friendly mass celebrated in the northeast corner of the Twin Cities. It's been a joy for us to do it. We've seen what Carolyn talked about as far as the bringing people together, keeping them engaged. It's really been a blessing to us all, and we're looking forward to continuing.
So next we're going to dive a little bit more into detail about steps that a congregation or faith community can take to become more dementia friendly, keeping in mind that, as Tom said, it is a continuous thing. You don't just one day become dementia friendly. It takes time, and even when you have implemented, you're still adjusting and growing. So Carolyn and Tom mentioned Dementia Friends. So Dementia Friends is a program that was developed by Act on Alzheimer's St. Paul, and now it's currently run out of Trellis, which was formerly the Metropolitan Agency on Aging. And they implemented Dementia Friends. Currently, there are almost 29,000 Dementia Friends in Minnesota. I looked earlier this morning, and we have a good chunk of Dementia Friends in Minnesota. The global amount is just over 100,000. So Dementia Friends is a global movement to change the way that we think about dementia. They host, I'm getting ahead of myself. So it is a global movement. And we believe that by helping one person understand dementia, that the community can be better, and those in it living with dementia can lead more quality, higher quality lives. Because we all interact with one another, we're all connected. And a big part of that is breaking down the stigma that Carolyn and Robbin were talking about. And actually, a big part of Dementia Friends is talking about, they have 5 key messages. And one of them, Robbin mentioned earlier, and that is dementia is not a normal part of aging. The 1-hour program of Dementia Friends is an excellent way to start introducing the concept of the stigma reduction and education to a faith community. And like Tom said, that's how St. Odilia's got their start. The 1-hour program not only has the 5 key messages, it also talks about what is normal versus what could be signs of dementia. It does a good job of illustrating how to interact and communicate with others living with dementia. And it's just 1 hour. So they're located across the metro, and actually individuals can attend after they've become a dementia friend, you can attend a training to become a champion, so that that champion is able to be the facilitator of the Dementia Friends 1-hour sessions. And then more about Dementia Friends and where they might be located currently are available on the Dementia Friends website, which is on a part of Trellis's website. And now I'm going to pass it back to Carolyn to talk about her program.
Yeah, so becoming a dementia-friendly faith community really was something that, because our work has focused since 2000 on people living with dementia with our gathering program, and as that has grown to be also support group and a lot of education to caregivers, I work with people that are early in their memory loss journey with a program as well online. So because of that work, we felt that it was natural. One of my positions is to be a resource to faith communities. So it seemed natural that we would start doing this training, and we've been doing this. You said 2017 was when you started, so we must have started just before that. So what I want you to know is by taking that class, some of this does cover what a Dementia Friends class would cover. So you wouldn't necessarily have to go into as long of a session if you had people trained in Dementia Friends. But we want people to understand that it's a brain disease. The facts are shocking, aren't they? What Robbin presented, what we've talked about, it's shocking. And we also want people to know about really important communication techniques. And honestly, if you can learn these techniques for communication, you can communicate with most anybody. They're very helpful. And that is reading body language, or also just being in the moment. If they say, my mom visited last night and their mother died 50 years ago, instead of you shocking them because they've forgotten their mom died, instead say, tell me more about your mom, and go with where they are at that time. So being in the moment is what we call that. I also talk case studies in that training, and then I give handouts on top 10 worship ideas, top 10 prayer ideas, top 10 building considerations, 19 communication tips, and then action steps that faith communities can go through. So we definitely know that in order for care to be the best for our people living with dementia, we need conversation to happen at the very earliest moment. So this impacts in a huge way the power of attorney. Who's the financial power of attorney? What is their living will? What are their hopes? What are they hoping that their timeline might look like if they had some choice in it? So we also want them to get in and get the best diagnosis and get to a memory clinic, a neurology, as soon as possible so that they can diagnose accurately. Why? Because there are many different types of dementia. There's 4 of the most common, but there are certain ones that you do not want certain medications used on. I just worked with somebody that is an employee at Trellis, and her father-in-law was just recently diagnosed. He had Lewy body. I was visiting with her, and I said, you know, you could almost put an allergy band on them that they can't have Haldol. Well, sure enough, that weekend, her father-in-law ended up in the emergency room in Washington State. He was having some huge behavioral problems, and they were wanting to give him Haldol. And she stepped in and educated the rest of the family. So do you see the importance of why to get diagnosed with what type? Because it does and can affect the medications. But then to also have help with monitoring the progression of it and treating appropriately. We're in an age now where what we're learning about the brain is coming in quite quickly. We haven't figured out the medication cure, but we definitely know a lot on the non-pharmaceuticals. And we know, because dementia still has a stigma, that these conversations aren't happening. And I will tell you that it's common that people will go to church if at the minimum they only go a few times a year. That's often more than they'll go see their doctor. if they haven't been to the doctor in 5 years. So do you see my background as a parish nurse, as a nurse at a church for 9 years? I really feel the faith community is critical in this work. Our dementia-friendly faith communities training is offered twice a year. Robbin's going to talk to you about hers. We are not in competition with one another, and she'll explain more of that. Instead, we feel very much colleagues working on the same effort. I do it twice a year. I'm always looking for places to host in Ramsey County, so please let me know if I can be of further help.
All right. Faith community nursing or parish nursing has been mentioned a few different times during the presentation. I'm the executive director at Faith Community Nurse Network, which is a small nonprofit that provides education to nurses that would like to become faith community nurses, healthcare professionals, and then we also administer and facilitate evidence-based workshops throughout the community. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about faith community nursing and how faith communities may choose to, if they don't already have a faith community nurse, move towards getting one because they would be a very good asset in a faith community becoming dementia-friendly. So some services that a faith community nurse typically provides to their faith community are health education, personal health counseling. They often are involved with volunteer coordination, care coordination, so they are able to help attend doctor's appointments or simply review a case and make sure that everyone's talking and making sure that things go smoothly, possibly making informal referrals to other resources in the community that might be beneficial to the person or the caregiver. Support group facilitation. Many of the faith community nurses in our network do offer caregiver support groups, dementia care support groups, in addition to support groups on grief and cancer and other chronic illnesses. The main thing that sets nurses, faith community nurses, apart from other nurses is that they are trained to specialize in intentionally caring for the spirit. And they recognize that caring for the spirit improves the whole person. They also are able to advocate and teach you how to advocate for yourself and your loved ones. I already mentioned the visits as well as the resource referral. I had mentioned our evidence-based programs, and I wanted to bring one to your attention because it is a good offering for congregations to offer, is our Powerful Tools for Caregivers program. And Powerful Tools for Caregivers is a program that's currently licensed out of the Iowa State, and it is a wonderful 6-week program. It's every week, it's 90 minutes long, and it's for caregivers. And there's often a confusion that it's teaching caregivers how to care or perform care tasks more so. But actually, the Powerful Tools for Caregivers program is designed to empower caregivers to take care of themselves so that they are then able to care for their care receiver. So the tools that caregivers receive during the 6-week program range from stress reduction to goal setting and action planning. We spend 2 full weeks on assertive communication to help communicate with not only your care partner, but family members that are also part of the care team, and doctors, and truly it helps in all areas of your life. If we talk about our emotions and negative thoughts, where are they coming from, and how to manage them, and how to change those negative or pessimistic thoughts into more positive, more constructive thoughts. We also discuss resources and how to specific resources, and then how to locate resources as well. And all of the powerful tools or evidence-based programs are through Juniper. So we're Lyngblomsten and Faith Community Nurse Network partner in providing several programs, but powerful tools for caregivers through Juniper, which is a statewide network. It's a program of Trellis, and they house multiple providers that offer these evidence-based programs. And now I'm going to turn it over to Robbin, who's going to talk about the Alter program.
Which I'm excited you're gonna get to hear about this.
Okay. All right. One thing I want to do is, how are we doing for time? Keep me on
We got
track.
an hour.
We got an hour?
We're doing well.
Okay, I'm not gonna do an hour though, don't worry.
We want them to have questions.
Yeah.
You got time.
Be able to have questions.
You're
And
good.
so, spirit and religion has just always, been a part of my life, and having that connection. And so as I was growing up, my dad had went to Boys Town and graduated from there in Omaha, Nebraska. And so we had the upbringing in the Catholic Church, and then I spent 3 months every summer with my grandmother down in Beebe, Arkansas, at her Baptist church. So I have had the benefit of different spiritual communities and seeing the key role that they play in people's lives. And so I had the good fortune that my leader, Dr. Joe Gogler, who is the leader for the Center for Healthy Aging and Innovation at the University of Minnesota, he brought me on it was right before the pandemic, so that would have been 2000. I never saw the regular university. I just wish I could experience that, but I think some things in life have pivoted for us forever. But the good news is when he brought me on, he wanted to make sure that the new center had that focus on equity and looking at how we can help reduce disparities. And so a lot of my work focuses in on those communities that have more disparities. He also wanted to make sure that we were involved with community partners and working with them. And so I think it was within the first year of me being there, he was working with the Public Health Center of Excellence on Dementia Caregiving, and he met a a faith nurse that would change my life and change the lives of many people here in Minnesota. At the time, she was at Emory University, but it is Dr. Fayron Epps. And so she had done the altar program in Georgia. And it's still a fairly new program. It is considered evidence-informed because this is the last year, the 5th year of their grant, but the evaluations look very good nationally. And then I'm going to be meeting with the Minnesota churches, and they look good here for Minnesota also. And so when Dr. Gogler was hearing about this program for Dr. Fayron Epps, he knew that I had done a lot of community education, like we talked about, to reduce the awareness and decrease the stigma in the faith community. So he said, Robbin, I've met this amazing person, Dr. Fayron Epps. I want you to look at her program. I know we have so much going on in Minnesota, but I want you to take a look to say, is this something that duplicates what we have, or would it be additive? And would it allow us to partner with those people, since we're not a direct service organization? So I have to tell people, I will meet with families and encourage them to go to the service providers. But I always tell them that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a community health worker. My job is connecting you with the resources. So I'm a bridger so that people can get help. And so I looked at the program along with my dear colleague, Elma Johnson, that helps lead our community advisory board. And I was like, perfect. This is perfect. And what made it perfect is that you work with the local resources in your community. And so you're directing people to the experts, to Sam and Carolyn and VOA and the people at Wilder, so it doesn't duplicate what they do. And so I was really thrilled about that. And then the other thing I felt that made the program excellent is that the program had 3 pillars. And so we're going to look at some slides for that. But what I found is some churches were doing a lot on education and raising the awareness in those things that we talked about, and Tom talked about that. Some churches were doing support groups, but no education. Very, very, very few were doing any type of modified spiritual service for those with cognitive decline. And so I got excited because this program is that was going to be in Georgia. Initially, they wanted to do 24 churches in 5 years, and it was by their team going out. And I just had the great privilege and blessing of launching this program here in Minnesota with support from Dr. Gogler and also our geriatric workforce enhancement program that helped fund for the churches. But that is what enabled us to bring the program here. And the good news is we just received 5 more years of funding. And it's so good. I'm just so happy. And so we have 6 churches in the altar program. You'll see flyers over for those churches, so if you want to look at that. And there's also a 1-page summary sheet. And I can provide both of those to Sam, because I'm sure that we make handouts available. So we'll we'll make sure you get those two resources. But you know how we talk about the whole person, and really with everything you've heard about the complexity and how important those spiritual needs are, and the self-care of the caregiver that Carolyn talked about, you want to have a program framework that has education, support, and spiritual connectedness. So we're going to look at a few of those elements on this altar program. This is for the Center for Healthy Aging, and we are really about making sure that every community and individual can achieve their life goals while aging. And we know for many of the communities, especially diverse communities, people want to remain home as long as possible, be a part of their church, be a part of their community. But we know as their cognitive decline happens, there's going to be things that they are not going to be able to do for themselves. So how do you connect those families with resources so people can age well at home? And so this covers the mission of CHI, and so I am one of multiple associate directors that report into Dr. Joe. So we have a director that is focused in on research. Dr. Tatyana Shippey leads up the research area. We have Marty DeLima. She leads up education. Rajan Moon, Dr. Rajan Moon, many of you may know him. He is been very involved with Age-Friendly Minnesota from early stages in the beginning, and he leads up our policy area, and myself for equity and community engagement, and then the other person that is newer to our team is from the School of Nursing. And so Siobhan, she will be leading up kind of the clinical practice piece of it. So that's how we're designed, is to work on those different areas related to aging. And my background was corporate America for 27 years. And then my heart was in the nonprofit and wanting to help people. And I was experiencing those health disparities across my family and seeing them in the community, and I did that pivot, and Sue Spalding and Linda Lawrence hired me to start at the Alzheimer's Association as their first director of diversity and inclusion, because they wanted to get out to more communities. And so I've had a non-traditional path, and not that researcher or academician, but that connector. And so I feel like I've got alignment with my personal and professional mission to help older adults. This goes over the CHI community engagement, and you can read more and find out more online for that. And so this is Dr. Fayron Epps. And and so when she started the program, it was gonna be Georgia-based. And then when we contacted her, she ended up training in myself and my colleague, Ashley Millenbaugh. We worked with that team probably for 6 months, really learning the Alter program so that we could do 2 things here in Minnesota. First, meet with the service providers and let them know this doesn't duplicate, this should enhance and multiply the people coming to you, because those people today don't know what is normal aging versus a problem. Many of them are concerned about going to the doctor. Nobody wants that dementia label across them because of all of the stigma. And so I remember Dr. Gogler's like, when are you going to meet with the churches? When are you going to meet with the churches? And I said, I'm not going to meet with the churches probably for about 2 or 3 months. And you know, it was really a great move because the service providers, they plug in to all of those pillars and are able to help. And so it's perfect being here with Sam and Carolyn today because their programs help support the faith communities, and people can take advantage of that. So Dr. Epps moved from Emory to the University of Texas Health Center in San Antonio, and she has an endowed chair there. And the program, instead of being in one state with 24 churches, is now in over 15 states, and it is going to hit 100 churches. 100 churches. And so that is because people were able to take the Altar program and learn about it, bring it into their community, partner with the service providers, partner with the churches, and you build out your local program without duplicating anything. And so it has experienced a lot of growth. We have 6 churches. My plan this year is to add 6 more churches, and then probably we'll be on pace for about 3 churches a year. So this, we've already talked about the problem, and we've talked about how faith communities are more than the place for worship, that they save multiple roles in the community. And so the Altar program launched in 2019, and sometimes people ask about the Altar name. And one thing I like about the Altar name, and it is with the ER, is that it is focusing on shifting perceptions and behaviors to reduce the stigma. And also about partnering. And this program has been recognized with multiple national awards. So when you do this program, you know it's been vetted and it is a successful program. These are the people that collaborated to bring Altar here, and so our Bold Center on Excellence on Dementia Caregiving, the Healthy Aging and Innovation Center, and then the Minnesota GWEP and the Georgia GWEP. So all of us partnered together and brought the program in. And so these are the pillars of Altar that I reference. And so the Altar program, what it is doing is providing education, resources, and financial contributions to support older adults and their families affected by dementia. And the program works with the church in 3 areas. And so that first area is the education area. And we've talked a lot about that. And you heard from Tom that they started with that education because people don't know what they don't know if it hasn't come up for them. So that is your first powerful pillar. Then it is the support that Carolyn talked about, support for the person living with dementia, but also the support for the caregivers. And I have been asked, I know one of the African American sororities asked me to do a workshop or plan in class, Dr. Epps and I, on self-care for the caregivers. And I started that workshop with saying, how many of you have a full tank of gas? And they raised their hand. A bunch of people had that. How many have a half a tank? How many have a fourth of a tank? Guess what? Nobody had an empty tank. And then I asked them to pick up their cell phones. Where's your charging? Who's at, 80% plus? Who's at 50% plus? Is there anybody here at less than 20%? And guess what they said? Nobody was there less than 20%. And I said, you, by focusing on self-care, get to decide, are you going to bring what is left of yourself to caregiving, or the best of yourself? You are as important as that gas tank, as important to the communications that telephone provides. And so we need to keep you well. And we know you're probably saying, I got so much on my list, but I'll tell you, it is not uncommon for the caregiver to pass away before the loved one living with dementia. I just want to repeat that. It is not uncommon for the caregiver to pass away before the loved one living with dementia. And so we talk about self-care in that context of, you need that space to take care of yourself, because guess what? The caregivers aren't going to the dentist. They're not getting their colonoscopy. They may not be getting their mammogram screening because they're doing so many things that they are last on that list. But that's where the respite programs and the support of the church and people that are working and supporting that caregiver can create that time for them to take care of themselves. But you can't do it. I really wish the model, is that you have the person living with dementia and you have the caregiver. I think every caregiver in an ideal world would have two people taking care of them.
Yeah.
Okay, because they're taking care of two people.
Yeah.
So imagine, situations where people are volunteering and that caregiver has people that their goal is to focus in on that caregiver. So that people can remain in their home and their community. And then the third pillar of Alter is the spiritual connectedness. And so churches that join the Alter program, they sign a 2-year, we call it statement of work. We were calling it memo of understanding, and people thought it was like a legal agreement, and they thought they might get sued, and it's like, no. We got to change the wording. So they sign up, and the statement of work reflects what they hope to achieve over that 2-year period, and they get a one-time contribution to help support what activities they want to do to promote awareness and support the caregivers. And we give them that after they do their welcome meeting, because then they are launched there. And the amount can vary, and it varies by community and what funding's available. So it may be $500, it may be $1,000. Sometimes it's a little bit over that. And it doesn't cover the time of the people that are doing the program, but it gives them funding so that they can have a special luncheon for caregivers, or have like a wellness day and bring in people to cook for the caregivers and do massage, whatever those things are. So these are some of the examples underneath each of the pillars. And so a church signs that 2-year agreement, and then they go in and they pick 8 initiatives that they want to do in their community. And so that's over 2 years. So it's 4 initiatives per year that they're doing, and we don't require them to do an initiative like within the first 30 days, because lots of people, what they need time to do is we ask them for an ambassador, and I always try to get 2 people, because we're just at this stage in life where something is always going on. And if not with us, then with our family. So I think the load is less when 2 people are sharing it. And then they get volunteers that work on their altar team that are altar champions. But it is not unusual for a church to spend the first 4-5 months taking some of the evidence-based program, doing Dementia Friends, any of those things that they want to do so that they have that baseline knowledge around Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. And we work with them and make sure they know about the resources, because we are not, their role is not to do the direct service to the family. And so we want them to get their congregations to the people that have the resources and expertise that the family knows. So like I've got that bridging role, that's their role. And sometimes they may spend 6 months just getting a family to go to the doctor. To get them to go to the doctor for lots of the reasons that we talked about, and so they each, if they can help in the church get people to resources, both in the church but resources in the community, that's really their role. And so we in Minnesota, we are so fortunate. We have so many excellent evidence-based program, evidence-informed programs. Juniper has an entire list. These service providers are doing programs too. So education is gonna be your easiest tier to do, because there's lots to pick from there. Then the second pillar is the support. And sometimes the families that are dealing with dementia, sometimes they don't tell other families that might be in their neighborhood or in their communities until they're ready to do that. And so one of the things that can help is a memory cafe, and that can be hosted in the church. It can be hosted at, I love the local Perkins or, a neighborhood place to eat. But what it does is it allows the person living with dementia and the caregiver to get together and have that social time. And sometimes it's starts off with everybody together, and then sometimes a group may separate up where the caregivers are now sitting together and the people are living with dementia. But it breaks down that stigma and you don't feel alone, because you are there talking with others and you can share ideas. We always say when you know one person with dementia, you know one person, because there's multiple stages, but the rate and pace, depending upon whether dementia is starting in the frontal temporal back or in the hypothalamus, all of those things impact it. And so this isn't one where you get your recipe and there you go. It evolves and it changes. Sometimes it changes rapidly. Sometimes it changes long term. But I've met many caregivers that have supported family for 15 to 20 years. So it can be a very long journey because lots of times people are perfectly happy running marathons and everything, but they've got this brain disease. Other times they may have other chronic conditions, so it really varies. All of the churches that are in the Altar program, they've all set up resources in their church bookstore. And so they have books and they have flyers and material. And I know one of the churches has 3 different entrances, and they have like what would look like a magazine rack. And what they have is they say, hey, here's our altar team, call us. But then they have information about the different educational programs and support. And sometimes, a family just needs to take on their own time the information from the Alzheimer's Association on what are the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. And in that brochure, it separates out normal aging versus dementia. And so, this because of the stigma and there's not a cure, it can be very overwhelming for people, and you have to meet them at their place. There's some people, they want it all. Send it all to me. Send me another file. There's other people that just want to sit with it. And they're still trying to understand that diagnosis, and they want to think about the prognosis. So it's really important that you meet people where they are and don't judge them or shame them. They have to go at their pace, just like all of us would if we had a diagnosis. And then, and so what they've done is they've made these materials available at their church, and it has like the altar signs. Sometimes they'll have balloons up on certain days with it, but it allows people to take information. If they want to have a conversation with the altar team at the church, they can have it. But if they want to go home and do some work themselves, they can do that. And then come and talk to people when they want to do that. And then the last area is the worship piece. And I get so excited with Tom talking about how they've changed their services. And now one has, odd and another one has even, because historically with the Black church, you might start with Sunday school at 9:30, and that goes to 10:30, and then there is a 30-minute break in there. Now you're in service. It might be an hour and a half, or it might be 2 hours and a half. Then sometimes there's a meal, and then there might be a play or praise and worship or another church. So when I was growing up Catholic and it was pretty much 1 hour, never more than 1 hour and 15 minutes, I would go down to my grandma and I'd be like, Grandma, I gotta have some food and some snacks and things. And I said, this is a long time, Grandma. And so I did my Sunday school in the main service. But then I'm like, that's enough, Grandma, because I'm half Catholic. And so, so I'm not coming back for the 3 o'clock program. So I'd go home. But I had plenty with that base. But what it means is that churches that have longer services historically, as they are working with the people affected by dementia, they are looking at doing things to make the service more accessible. And so I was at one of our churches, and now all of the words to everything are up on their big 3 TV screens. The ushers all have name tags. They often will understand who might be in cognitive decline, not their medical history, but that they might need assistance. They will have a quiet room. If somebody needs a break, they just need a break and then they want to dive right back in. But people are varying the length of worship service, and they are also intentionally sharing the, I'm going to call them old school because I'm old school, now that I'm over 60, but they're sharing the old school music and prayers. Because people, like Tom said, the Mass. When I go now to a Catholic church, I know the Mass. It doesn't make any difference if I've been attending a different church. It's just ingrained in me from going to the school and the Masses. And so, okay, here's what to expect. So they, instead of using, let's say, the contemporary gospel, and I love my contemporary gospel, especially my C.C. Winans, but they didn't grow up with C.C. Winans. So you may be using these songs and these prayers. And so you want to think about that age of your congregation, and when you are doing that accessible congregation, think about their time, what was their music, what were their prayers, what were some of the spiritual traditions, because that is going to come back to them. We also have churches that are taping like 6 to 10 minute special spiritual selections and putting them on their website. Dr. Epps started this with her bishop. In fact, he has a YouTube channel, and sometimes when I just feel like I'm tired, uplift me, I got a long week, I can go there, but they have the YouTube, and so it includes a song, a prayer, a short worship message, and ends with that. So we have people that have taped those with their pastors and members, and then they put that on the work site. So if you have somebody, let's say, providing respite, they can access that video with their pastor. Or if church is not going to work for them that Sunday, then that becomes a tool that you can access. And then certain churches also are making sure that they will dedicate a time, like Tom talked about, maybe it is the 5th Sunday where they are doing dementia education. I was at a church where one of the caregivers had lost her husband to early onset, and she did a book launch. She wanted other people to know about this early onset that her and her son went through. So they did service. Pastor showed the book at service. He talked about why they were in the altar program and encouraged everybody, stay for 45 minutes because we're launching the book and everything. And so that is a way that people can learn for other people, or having somebody that's willing to share their story. Any part of it that they feel comfortable with, it means and tells the people that it's okay to talk about this. So those are the pillars. I'm just going to briefly say that there's 16 initiatives that they do. The first 8 initiatives are around their building and facility, to make sure that people can get to the bathrooms, that you've got ushers. So, and they get a booklet to show them all of that. So this is about making the church and the staff that greets an usher ready. And then this is what an altar champion does. And we've talked about these already, the acceptance and valuing people and seeing people not through the lens of a disease. They are still there. Even as that progression is, that essence of them is there. And so you want to be able to have that. We already mentioned the statement of work, and this is a document. You see the little check boxes? That's where the church gets to pick what they want to do. And I love the flexibility of this program because a lot of times, if there's a grant for something, you must do this. Well, that may not be the need in your congregation. And if you notice there's blank lines, you can develop your own program too. So as long as you do 8 initiatives over that 2-year period, you pick out what that is. We do have them they often will do an assessment of what kind of activities are interested, and then they can plan out using this chart or whatever they want. What do they want to do and how frequently do they want to do it? And guess what? Every quarter, you can change it if you need to. So you're not locked in, because as you learn more, like Tom talked about, it's a journey of learning, then you can modify and change it. Briefly, and I'm going to end on this, with the Altar program, they get the Altar toolbox, and in there is a step-by-step guide called the Community Partner Guidebook. And it tells them how to do those first 8 initiatives associated with the building and environment, and gives them step-by-step examples for each of the pillar areas. And then we do an initial 4-hour training with them. And there's training throughout the Altar program for not only the Altar champions and their team, but that are open to the entire church. And with that, and then we make sure that they have a wealth of resources, and so we develop resource packets for them so that they know what those are and they can share that with their church. And then now that the network has grown, we get a newsletter, and we get together on a meet and greet, and the churches are able to share what they're learning and doing. So everybody is learning together, because there isn't just one recipe. So you want to try different things. These are the churches here that are Altar Faith Partners, and 4 of them are on this side of the river, and then there's 2 in Minneapolis. But they're doing great work. Some are large, some are small. It's not a competition. You do what you can do, as Tom said, that you can sustain. So sometimes the little churches will be like, I can't be an altar, we're too small. You can be a congregation of 10 or 15 and be an altar. You'll do what's appropriate for how you can make a difference. And so these, I think you're getting a copy of our slides, but here's the information on this program. This program is specifically culturally designed for the African American community. I'm hoping with Dr. Epps's move to San Antonio that there'll be researchers that will do this within the Latino community. I can see with their Catholic churches in the Latino community. And then here locally, we have people that are interested from the Somali community bringing this into their mosque. This can go to, different religions and different cultures, but we're going to need that researcher and community team to work with Dr. Epps, because you have to know that community. All right, that's everything.
You'll also have a slide that says resources. This is just a beginning of resources.
Yeah.
There are a lot more. I didn't even put my own organization on it.
Whoops.
But now we have about 15 to 20 minutes for questions. So if anyone has questions for any of the four of us or on the topic, we would love to try to answer them for you. Anyone? Yes.
Robbin, I'm curious as to what kinds of responses you got from churches when you initially approached them. Maybe you mentioned that and I missed it, but yeah, I'm curious to hear about that.
Yes. Yes, and so by meeting with the service providers first, many of them were already working with churches. And so by building that relationship and them understanding how their programs support the pillars, some of them identified churches that they were serving that would be interested in Alter. Overall, lots of people, they have a general feel for dementia, but they don't know that African Americans are twice as likely, or that women are 2/3 of the people. So there's still, like we know about the scope of certain chronic diseases and those, but we've lost more people to Alzheimer's than we have to prostate and breast cancer. They need their attention too, but I think people are surprised at the impact. And then once they realize, that their community is impacted, even if you don't know who they are, then they're open to, looking at the resources. And we ask them not to create a new ministry. I think Tom mentioned 60 ministries. Several of our churches, they have 15 or 20 ministries. So what we encourage them to do is place the Alter program. It could be the deacons, it could be the women's ministry, it could be the senior ministry, the living well, but place it there, but get people involved when you think about what is the experience. So maybe somebody from hospitality, an usher, a greeter, but they are interested in the programming, but they have a lot of initiatives that they're doing. So sometimes you have to wait with it. So I think the soonest I had a church sign on is 4 months. There's some that are 2 years and going, because they need the volunteers to support the program. But people, they want the information, and even if they don't want to do the Alter program, we can support them with information. So we want this program to have a great brand. And if you go to a church that's in the Alter program, that you are going to see these different pillars in it. So we can start doing just education and connect people up with resources. But we really want to make sure that if we bring them on, it's the right timing for them and that they have those co-chairs. If they don't, it's not a fit.
Yes.
I'm just kind of curious in regard to, so Alter, it seems like it's rather contained. Like in the Black community with churches that sign on, are any of those resources available to other churches to, like I'm imagining training or just, procedures or your vision, that kind of thing?
Yes, and they're, with Carolyn's program and Sam's program, those are for all churches. And so any church that wants to become dementia-friendly, I like the way that Tom and his church started, and starting with the Dementia Friends education. And for people that are interested in doing that training, and then get yourself some dementia champions that go back so that they can teach the Dementia Friends program in the church. And then you can bring together volunteers, and then all of the people on there, the Alzheimer's Association, they have 12 different classes, and they will send a volunteer to you or do it online. So all of the resources, they have been here long in existence. They weren't created just for Alter. They're resources that are available, but you want to learn about those resources and then do your programming. Because Tom's doing all of the aspects of Alter.
Not me.
Yeah, you and your group, not Tom alone. Yes, yes. The church team, they are doing that. So we can definitely connect you up with people, but any faith community.
Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just was thinking that, if you look at what Fayron Epps has done, Georgia, San Antonio, across the country, that Robbin has done here in Minnesota, I wanted you to hear it today. I wanted you to understand that we're really all on a similar team. But Robbin has had an interesting task and so has Fayron, because they have generational trauma that has driven their folks away from the medical community. So they have got another layer of work. We talk stigma, now you add generational trauma on that, and what wrongs have been done to them for generations. And so it's different in how they come in and they gain trust, and then how can they gain trust in some agencies. So for example, at Lyngblomsten, we belong to the Metropolitan Caregiver Service Collaborative. Sam does as well. Roseville Alzheimer and Dementia Action Team belongs to it as well. So we work with caregiver services across the metro. And so when someone calls, we maybe can educate them and help get them resources, but it might be better for us to connect them with senior community services out on the southwest part of the metro. So and like Robbin is referring to Volunteers of America, again, a service provider. So we are wanting to work together. There's more work than what we can possibly all accomplish, honestly. But now I want to tell you, it is up to all of you to refer to us, because if our programs don't stay sustainable, they'll go away. And the only way they can be sustainable is if you're out there helping us to market, because we don't have, a lot of us are functioning just on the basics because it's expensive to run staff-led programming. And so it requires the community to be out there referring to our dementia-specific programming. So Robbin and I, we are not in competition. We are both out there cheerleading for each other, because we want this work to happen. And I'm so thrilled that I've been following Fayron prior to Robbin coming on board, and I was so thrilled when Robbin came on board, because if I may say, Lyngblomsten, we have a lot of African staff. We have a lot of African American staff. However, we also have a lot of Caucasian staff. And so we are serving, but in a different light. Therefore, we may not necessarily be the organization that African Americans might reach to. What are they comfortable reaching to? Volunteers of America has extensive work in the African American and African communities. So none of us is saying that we are the only ones that can do it. We are just wanting to find people that can fit in there. The other thing that was talked about earlier, I think Tom mentioned that the attendees that come to their dementia-friendly masses. I will tell you, if you are able to offer like something like this in your faith communities, you need to advertise also to your senior housing in your community and your assisted livings. Because if you are the best kept secret, but you never intended to be the best kept secret, then in fact, that is a disservice, because they may bring a whole bus of people that are excited to come and be a part of this. So getting the word out is probably the biggest challenge. That's why I asked if you have people that you know of that would be interested, or faith communities, send them our way. Robbin, I'm sure, would love it if you have a friend that's in an African American community, faith community, and they would be interested to have you help make the connection with Robbin.
And there's great organizations across the Twin Cities. We've been fortunate here because I was working with the Mississippi Department of Health, and the person I'm working with, she's a rock star, but they have not had allocated in their state budgets funds for things such as Age-Friendly Minnesota that the governor signed in. They haven't had MBA, Minnesota Board on Aging grants. And so in their community, their people that can serve people are more medical and clinical. Whereas organizations here, for example, in the Latina community, Centro Tyrone Guzman has their wise elders. They, I view as the go-to organizations for that community, and it's not done by the census where everybody is treated the same. You fall into Hispanic or Latino or Latina. They, when you go in their building and their programming and their art and all of that, it recognizes the diversity within the diversity. And that is so important because people don't often talk about that. So there is a difference if you have been here for 20 years versus you're a new immigrant. Those types of things. And as the African American community faces concerns and distrust with medical, imagine being here and you have someone that doesn't have their citizenship. Are you going to go and talk to an organization? So, you know, there's lots of things, but Centro's doing great work. Cappy, Seawall, I mean, there are people, I was making a chart of them that have had like 4 to 5 grants across the Hmong, the Southeast Asian, Korean services. So, you know, we talked a bit about Alter because I'm with that program, but across the cultural communities, they have stepped in. They had to step in.
Yeah.
Where was the language? Where was the trust? And they're good. But it doesn't mean if you're doing one program one place, you don't go to other places. Like I know people that have done the powerful tools. It was going to be offered by VOA, but it was going to be 4 months. They took their team. I said, go to Wilder. They went to Wilder and did it. Powerful tools is powerful tools.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, you know how we say that there's differences, and that is true, but then there are those common pieces. And I know somebody was a caregiver for 17 years, and they ended up going to a Wilder support group. And for them, the proximity to their home was number one. Would they have liked a support group maybe that had other African Americans in there too? Yes, but she said nice to have. I need something I can access in 15 minutes. If it's 50 minutes, I'm gonna go 2 times a year. If it's 15 minutes, I can go check on mom and go that. So I let people know about culturally responsive programs and that, but you can see multiple programs. And my goal is to let them know there is an array of programs. Talk to the people. We all have that shared mission of having people be able to age in community with dignity and respect and supporting the health of caregivers. That's what we do. And so that mission binds us.
Deacon Jim.
Hospice care seems to have opened up more for late-stage Alzheimer's. How has that affected any of your programs? Positive, negative, or great?
It would never be a negative. I don't know, it's impacted our families in a much better way because they're able to access hospice at an earlier time than what they could have before. But it most certainly has never, it's not challenged the programs. And if anything, it's beginning to break through some of the silos because now that hospice silo is bigger. So if anything, it's helping to address what we're all trying to address. And that means a lot.
They don't interfere with
No.
your
No,
No.
not at all.
Do they have a good understanding of Alzheimer's?
Hospice? I would say absolutely yes. And of course, as you know, there's many hospices out there. But personally and professionally, I've experienced many. And first of all, I will tell you that hospice is unique, and most of the staff that go to hospice stay there for years. I'm going to also tell you that dementia work is very unique, and staff that go there often are there for many years. So it's actually kind of similar. And so, anybody else?
I would say the usage, the knowledge of hospice and the usage of hospice that isn't a program that people grew up using. And what's happening is there is a low awareness of it and a distrust. And then a lot of people say, no, don't call hospice. If you call hospice, they're gonna pass away in 1 week. Well, you know why? Because you did not call them to the end. They were not drinking. They were not doing that. And I can tell you, I went through, it'll be a year this Thursday, my mom passing away with vascular dementia, but also kidney failure. And we had always kept her at home, but she went to assisted living for 2 months, and it wasn't the care we needed, so we put a full-time caregiver there. And then she still wasn't having managed pain, and there were new medication people, and we brought in palliative care. And then my mom decided to stop dialysis due to care and pain. She's like, I'm at peace. And hospice is so there for the person, but their support of the family and caregivers is critical. Like some people in my family, they're like, it's a good day. She ate some solid food. And I'm like, no. And sure enough, all of that needed to be dealt with an intervention, but they literally tell you what to expect 1 to 3 months. And knowing this, and I remember sitting down with my siblings, and then we kind of like, well, we're here and here's here. But we don't, if you think we don't talk about dementia, imagine talking about death.
Right.
So you often don't know that process, but I'm telling you, the hospice team we had at assisted living, they wouldn't do an enema. I said, I can do an enema. They just, it was a service they didn't do.
It's a different level of care.
It's a different level, and so the hospice team came right out because Mom was so uncomfortable. They did that. They did extra wound care, and so
They're
I
exceptional.
am a big supporter. And you call them anytime, and you can just call them because you're sad or you're preparing.
Absolutely.
But we need to let more communities know, because there's a lot of myths, and it is way underutilized, and it is covered by Medicare.
It's
So we have people
I will
not
say that
using it.
we did a hospice program earlier this year, and it's up on the website. So it was around hospice and dementia. I think it was in July. And I will say that I will echo hospice is important. We're out of time. But hospice is important, and I would say that some hospices are more equipped and better at caring for people with dementia. So please interview
Yes,
providers
correct.
before signing on, because I've
Correct.
found that
Yes.
some definitely have an edge over others.
So that could be a question that we might have for an individual to you,
Individual,
to look
To-
at which hospice.
yeah,
Correct.
I mean, we may know, but it might be,
As you call the
as you call
hospice.
hospices to.
You may have to ask
interview
them as
You might
well.
have to, yeah.
Thank you
With
very
their
much.
experiences. Yep. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Have a wonderful afternoon.
We so appreciate you all being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.